Okay, so first of all, what I want to start out with is the fact that this is really historic right now. And it's not historic for the coronavirus. It's not historic for the stock market and what it's doing. What is historic is that a blogger in 2011 set out to basically give physicians a fair shake on Wall Street. And what I would tell you right now is that every single person involved in the White Coat Network as a blogger or a consumer or an informal leader in this mass financial literacy, you're not just giving people a fair shake on Wall Street anymore. You are actually changing Wall Street, and we'll get to how. So if you think about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, if you had a room full of physicians like this and an advisor up here talking, they would be telling you something like, you just keep doing your day jobs and just give your money to me and just don't worry about it. You don't have time to think about it. This is not in your expertise. Let the experts do it. But how have the experts done? So as we saw from the previous slide deck with Dr. Dolly, 27% of physicians in their 60s don't even have $1 million yet. But I would hazard a guess that many of them have a financial advisor. And so I think as we are rolling through the first group of people who cannot retire right now but want to, this rising student loan crisis, the rising credit card crisis, this is what we have learned the hard way about the financial services industry. They have a loyalty to where they make money. And the loyalty is to your investments in a retirement account. But their job is not to help you retire. And that is a really fundamental difference. They're there to help you with your investments. Their responsibility is not to make sure that you can retire one day. And everyone in this room knows a physician who is still working well into their 70s who doesn't want to be doing that, right? Okay, so that is our biggest indicator that that is what is happening. So I want to give the good news, though. Let's just take 3 random people that have walked into our offices virtually. So we have a mid-career couple who wake up one day with a massive whole life policy and a lot of credit card debt. Both physicians. And a lot of kids. More kids than I can count. And so somewhere between bleary-eyed shifts and taking care of kids, they stumble on the White Coat Investor blog and start reading, whoa, we are really not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And within a 2-month period of time, they're able to completely turn things around, to figure out what to do to stop funding those whole life policies, to get out of credit card debt aggressively, and to get on the right savings rate so that they can one day be able to retire. Or what about the young couple still in residency who has $1.2 million in student loan debt? Could you imagine a world where you would have that much debt and not have the White Coat Investor blog? It's funny, I talk to a lot of med students now. It's really hard to find someone who hasn't heard of it. So then you think about the DIYer who's been DIYing his whole life and he's near retirement, but he's been doing it in a really lonely way. He's been trying to cobble together from this financial book that has some good wisdom but seems to be selling something else here and random articles in places. And he's been able to cobble together his own DIY plan. And as he's nearing retirement, he's a little worried. What if he got it wrong? And then he stumbles into the White Coat Investor blog. And suddenly, he has found his tribe. So what we know now is that these physicians are 3 people, but there are 800 stories between here and the live cast, and anybody who's watching, who are all changing Wall Street fundamentally. Because you guys are doing your own investing. You guys, for the most part, you're doing your own financial planning, And that is going to have a massive ripple effect. So does anybody think things have changed on Wall Street yet? Have we seen any change? Well, actually, we have. How many people have watched the expense ratio or the fees? How many of you have watched the fees on mutual funds? Where have they gone? Have they gone up or down? They're going down, and they're dropping really, really fast. And why are they dropping really, really fast? Competition. So it's all supply and demand. That's what sets pricing. And if a group of 800 wealthy physicians in a room and the tens of thousands of people out there who are not in this room look at the actively managed mutual market world and say, no thanks, I'll pass on my personal account, that is how you drive down the costs of mutual funds. We're also seeing costs aggressively go down in retirement accounts. So it's really interesting to me to see a flood of white coat readers who are going and joining their investment committees at their hospitals, at their clinics, and saying, hey, listen, if you have a 1% expense ratio on our fund options, and then the cost of the record keeper and the TPA, who are the ones that actually administer a retirement plan, plus the advisor who's in charge of picking out the fund list itself, is 1%. That is a cumulative 2 percentage points. So if I'm a physician nearing retirement and I expect to have an average rate of return on my money of, say, 5%, you are giving away 40% of your return every year. Does anybody think that sounds like a good idea? No, we are seeing a major wealth transfer from the financial services world into hardworking middle-class America, and it is because of everybody here in this room. Because when you join an investment committee and you get fees reduced on your retirement plans from 2% to 0.5%, that is going to impact every single employee of that hospital, and it's going to keep more money in their pocket, which is more precious than ever in a retirement crisis. And that is how you are having a massive impact on Wall Street. So I can also tell you this. I started my company, as Dr. Dolly said, in 2011. And it was this basic idea. It was coming out of this housing crash that caused the 08-09, the housing crisis that caused the 08-09 crash. And I asked this simple question: where can people actually go to not buy a house, you know, that to get advice on whether or not to buy a house that's non-conflicted, you know, someone that doesn't have financial skin in the game. And it was really hard to find people doing that. So I had this idea: what if you just ask people to write a check for your advice? Well, I thought it sounded like a great idea, that you could take someone, say, that had $1 million in assets, and they were paying $10,000 in a 1% management fee, and you could give them a plan for $1,500 that's a one-time thing. They take it, they run with it, and they get to save all those fees over time. Little did I know that apparently if $10,000 goes out of your account, just out the back end in fees, did y'all know that's not real money? So I didn't realize that. It's not real. So I never would have made it, because if people had to write a check for me with real money, and I was competing against people who were working for not real money, obviously this never would have worked. So when Dr. Dolly heard about what I was doing and what my team and I were doing, basically, he started talking about us. He started educating people on fees. He started helping people be able to discern, you know, what's a fee that is worth paying for? What are you getting for that fee? Is it worth it? And so that is what I believe the only reason I'm staying, the only reason that it worked. I'm getting a little bit of can y'all still hear me okay? I'm getting some pauses. Okay. So what I want to do today is walk through the tax-efficient waterfall. And the reason this is important is because while we are seeing massive changes in mutual fund fees, in retirement plan fees. The one area we are not seeing a lot of change on is the financial advising industry. So the industry that's responsible for helping you figure out how much to save and where to put it. And so right now, at this time, I would say most people are better off going it alone than trying to hire someone randomly to do their money, because there are still major conflicts of interest with your money. So if you think about it, if you have someone who sells life insurance, which a lot of life insurance agents, come after physicians because they can make a lot of money off you. If you want to have an aggressive repayment of 3 to 5 years on student loans, how excited do you think a guy selling insurance is going to be about you having that plan? Not very excited. Not at all excited. In fact, might kind of talk you out of it. So what you have to do is figure out how much you have to save, and then where to put that money in your buckets. And then that is how you're going to be able to create your own DIY financial plan. Okay, so one of my favorite things to do is to talk to fourth-year med students. And it's a really fun, hilarious exercise where I give them a scenario of a couple. And so she's a physician, makes $300,000, and so one income household, kids, all, the whole thing, and then $300,000 in student loan debt. And we break up the room into 7 different groups, and each of them has a job, and that is to be able to figure out how much we're going to spend on one item, from a house to a car to whether we're going to do private school and all of that. And it's really fun because the exercise starts with lots of laughing and giggling. And so Dr. Turner and Dr. Mizell are the ones in the back there. I think you're going to be hearing from them in a bit. They're the ones that run these awesome programming for fourth-year med students, semester long. So anyway, they can testify to how funny it can be when you first get started. So we usually pick the house first, and they do something prudent. So they pick a house that's 2 times income when, the lenders are willing to give them money at 4 times income. So that's a good decision. They choose a Prius, a used one, and only have a car payment of $400 a month. They send their kids to public school, and they decide to do something really prudent, like pay off their student loans in 5 years. And you can see by the time we get to the 4th group, it ain't funny anymore. People start to get real worried because they are patting themselves on the back for making great financial decisions, yet they run out of money. The lesson here is this. A financial plan is critical, but it's not complicated. This is a financial plan right here, just these numbers. And what it is it's the opposite of the way people make a financial plan right now, which is you make financial decisions that seem prudent, one at a time. All financial decisions, how much to save, where to put it, how fast to pay off the student loans, how much house to buy, it all has to be made at one time if you want to have a good financial plan, but it's addition and subtraction. Okay, this is the way most of us in the room were probably brought up. We were brought up in the good old American way, which is to stimulate the economy. And we can stimulate the economy by consuming first and then believing that somehow there'd be a little bit of money left over to save, right? So we have a consuming culture. So when we were taken to a car lot with our parents to go pick out a car, we thought that the process of buying a car was to pick out the interior, to smell the leather, to look at the new technology, to pick the safest car. But what we didn't feel the pain of was the payments that came after. The payments during those really lean months that made it super hard where we had to pull from savings. Same thing with buying a house. We picked a house based on how big the yard was, based on how many bedrooms it had, not based on what it was going to mean for us to have to make those payments months after months. Folks, I'm telling you, the simplest, most important thing you could ever do more important than the tax efficient waterfall, is to just pay yourself first. That's it. That, like, literally, we could just drop the mic and leave here if everybody could just pay themselves first and then spend the rest, right? Because the rest is real simple. Okay. In order to have the ability to pay yourself first and then be able to make sure your money works for you, you have to have a good financial plan. And so what I want to go through is the different ways that you can do a financial plan. So first of all, I believe that you can do a financial plan. And as Dr. Dolly said, the majority of people in this room are DIYing and should be DIYing. You are reading the books, you are listening to the podcasts, you are reading the blogs, you are more educated. So Dr. Dolly and I were talking on the way in, I'm still shaking up here. This is the toughest crowd I will ever be in front of talking about money, ever. And I'm sure I'm going to say a million different wrong things. And the deal is I would put you guys up against any financial advisor out there on your financial knowledge, many of you. So here's the thing. You should be doing your own financial plan. For the folks who don't necessarily want to do the financial plan, consider doing a financial planning course. And there's some great courses out there, like the Fire Your Financial Advisor course. Imagine if you can go do a course like this, you don't run the risk of running out and doing this really cool BDR, backdoor Roth, and then forgetting the pro rata principle, right? So you can do the Fire Your Financial Advisor course and simply make sure that nothing slips between the cracks. And the beauty of the financial industry, remember, we're trying to change it here, is that advisors like my company, like Aptus, are willing to let people pay a one-time fee to review your plan. So if you do a plan and you want to make sure you're doing it great, there are advisors who will spend 3 or 4 hours with you and make sure you've done it right. Okay, then let's say you really are nervous about doing your own financial plan. You can hire a fixed fee advisor to run your financial plan, teach you how to invest, and you run with it. We call that guided DIY. And that is also for people who want to do it but don't want to read the stuff, don't want to go through the course. That is also a very legitimate way of consuming financial advice in the industry. And finally, there is nothing wrong with turning over your money to an advisor. So there are people who are truly paralyzed by the thought of doing their own money. There are couples that have a lot of strife between them that make it really difficult to DIY a plan. And, while I do believe that we have pushed the industry forward in how we help people manage their own money, I do believe there will always be a place for advisors who take people's assets, give financial planning, and manage it for them. Okay. So here are the building blocks for your pay yourself first system. So you pay yourself first. Then, as Dr. Dahl, set aside money, lots of money. You can set aside money in different savings accounts to basically prepare for the unknown unknowns like emergencies and the known unknowns like repairing your roof. You're going to have to do it. You just don't know when. And if you can save along the way for those fluctuations, then what that allows you to do is have such a precise plan that you can know precisely how much money is left over on a monthly basis that is safe to average into the market. Because we know perfectly averaging into the market is how you make sure you most efficiently get the gains in the market. Then we'll talk about this later. You pay your bills, but constantly reduce them. We know bills do not bring incremental happiness. And then, for the spenders among us, and I am one of you, it feels so good to spend everything in your account. It's like something in the brain that gets soothed and you get to spend it all. And it's a fantastic feeling for some of us, terrifying for others. But this is where spenders and savers get to meet in harmony in a financial plan when you pay yourself first. Okay. Hate having slides with so many numbers. So just think of this as like a reference for later. I will also mention that on the conference app, we have a couple resources for you where you can actually pencil through or use, for our Excel nerds in here, you can use an Excel spreadsheet to put together a rudimentary plan of your own. So that's available for you. And this is a reference point that you can use. So we know that pretty much if you save about 20% of your gross income as a high earning physician, you'll probably be able to retire. But we can refine that number a little bit. And so if you want to be able to diagnose, are you on track for retirement? There are a ton of really cool apps out there where you can run your numbers. But this is just a little kind of rudimentary little grid that you can also use. And the way you would use it is this. You would figure out how many financial assets you have right now, and you would take your age, and you would line those up, and that is roughly probably what your savings rate ought to be. So let's say you get out of residency, you're 35, and you have nothing to your name. You would probably want to have more of a 25% savings rate than someone who is just 30 coming out of residency. Now, we believe that student loans are investments. I want you to stop thinking about student loans as debt. As we saw from the research before, it can have a paralyzing effect on you. And I want you to turn that around and realize that if you have 6.8% debt, when you pay that off, that 6.8% is like getting a rate of return on your money. And if you look at that as after-tax rate of return, you would have to have a guaranteed, federally backed rate of return of more than 8% to get a tax equivalent yield of 6.8%. And so look at your student loans in a different way. We're going to talk about those in a second. But here's how I want student loans to play into this grid. Let's say that you have about the number of student loans that you have in income. I would say that most of us want to slay that student loan debt within 5 years. And probably in order to do that, you're going to max out your retirement account that's maybe $19,500 for this year. You might max out an HSA, maybe max out a backdoor Roth, and we're going to go through those. But then the rest of your money is probably better off going to slay the student loan debt so that you can have it repaid in 5 years. But that means you're under saving for retirement likely. So what I would recommend you do is shift down your age by 5 years on this chart if you have about 1 times your pay in current student loans. So you can also fire yourself up and you can plan to retire, or what I like to say, just be work optional by the time you're 55. And you can see that is quite a feat, but a lot of people do it. I kind of put myself in this category and feel like I can live to tell about it, even as myself being a spender. So I highly recommend people taking a look at this and saying, could I pay myself first 35 or 40% to have the ability to live life on my own terms by the time I'm 55? Okay, so this brings us to the highlight of our day, which is the most exciting thing you've ever experienced in your life, the tax-efficient waterfall. Are y'all excited about this? Do we need to get some caffeine and some stretching? Okay, good, thank you. I have a clapper in the front row who promised me to clap every now and then. Okay, so here is what we're gonna do. We're gonna walk step by step through the places that I want you to prioritize those savings. So you've picked your savings rate, presumably, and on the conference app, if you pull that pay yourself first system, eventually what you're going to do is plug in that percentage savings rate and then make it into a dollar figure, and then you can pull those dollars through these buckets as we go. Well, not right now, because you're probably going to need to cozy up with that. I will be around at the conference and can walk anybody through it as they do it. Okay, so first of all, this is just a resource slide. So if you come back to the slides and you want to remember how much can I put into those accounts, we have a few of the popular ones in here so you can grab what the federal limits are for those accounts. Okay, so folks, here's the deal. It is amazing to me that there are people so paralyzed by student loan debt We saw again in the research, this could not have been a better tee up for this talk, that there are so many physicians that have been talked out of their company retirement plans by people selling insurance, that they are literally walking away from what is sometimes a 100% immediate rate of return on their money. So I know at our local hospital and teaching hospital in Little Rock, they actually match your savings dollar for dollar up to 10%. Could you imagine anybody turning that deal down? It's incredible. A lot of hospitals have what's called a safe harbor match, where they'll match 100% up to 3% and then 50% on the next 2%. So they give you 4% immediately on whatever you put in. It's incredible. So do that first, okay? No matter what, of all the things, do that first. Now, there's one little technical detail that is worth mentioning and worth you guys taking the time to ask questions on. And that is the timing of how you put your money in, because it can affect how much you get in a match. So there is a mechanism that clinics can have called a true-up, where if you have large fluctuations in income and you go ahead and front load at the beginning of the year your $19,500, they have a way of settling out what percentage of what income level they ought to put in to match you. If there is no true-up, you could actually be leaving money on the table. And so that is the jargon that makes no sense to me, but there it is, true up. You know, thank you, financial services industry, for yet more useless information. So there's the language you need to use when you go ask your HR department if they have this mechanism. And if you were putting money in, front loading it maybe over the first 3 months or so to get your contributions in quickly, you might want to consider actually drawing those out over the course of a year to make sure that you can maximize the match. Okay, next, slay the credit card debt. So one of the first things we like to do with folks coming out of residency that have $50,000, $60,000 in credit card debt is pay it off. Okay, get your match and then pay that credit card debt off as quickly as possible, because some of that credit card debt has 22-23% interest rate. Okay, let's go to one of my favorite new accounts, which is a health savings account. Now, I know a lot of people here probably understand how to use an HSA, but I do want to go through this just in case there are folks that don't know this amazing retirement tool that the federal government unwittingly created when they came up with the idea for an HSA. First of all, a health savings account is not the same as an FSA, where if you don't use it, you lose it. That's a totally different deal. So make sure, first of all, that you can look at this one with fresh eyes. So the first thing I want to say about the HSA is don't make a decision on the HSA until you've made the right decision on your health insurance. So there are a lot of physicians who have the choice between a traditional, like a PPO plan, and a high deductible healthcare plan, so HDHP. So you first have to make the best financial decision, the best health decision for you and your family by choosing the right health insurance plan. Once you have chosen the right health insurance plan, let's say you opted for the high deductible healthcare plan that lowers premiums. You don't have any chronic illnesses that you worry about hitting the deductible every year. And so then you have the option to start a health savings account. And so what this does is it allows you to put pre-tax money into an account, and then as long as you use that money eventually at some point in your life on health expenses, then you don't pay any form of taxes on it when you withdraw it. You don't pay income taxes when you withdraw it, and you don't pay capital gains taxes when you withdraw it. Now, why would capital gains taxes even be a possibility? Well, it turns out that some enterprising companies decided, well, wait a minute, the HSA looks a little less like a health account and a little more like a retirement account. So why don't we allow people to deposit their money into an actual brokerage account called an HSA, grow that money over time, and then use it in retirement, where what is the number one cost in retirement, folks? It's healthcare. That's a pretty safe bet to lock up your money. But wait, there's more. You're not locking up your money. So if you were to pull this money after age 60 and not use it for health expenses, you just pay income taxes on it, which makes the HSA exactly like your IRA. It works exactly like your 403B. That's why a lot of people call an HSA a stealth IRA. Is that not the coolest account you've ever heard? Like, I can't believe people aren't like jumping up and down and dancing on the tables. It's a cool account, which is why it is before our next one, which is to max out the retirement plan. Now, you've gotten your match, you've gotten out of debt, you've maxed out your HSA and invested it in stocks and bonds, and now you go back to your retirement plan and you fill that bucket as much as you can. And there are lots of different ways you can have a retirement plan. So we've seen amazing retirement plans that you can put, like the same hospital I was talking about earlier, you can actually max out a 403B and a qualified pre-tax 457 plan that works just like the 403B. So you can double up how much money you can put in those. There are still practices out there that have cash balance pension plans that can be a great deal, and they're pretty flexible. You can roll them over after you're done into an IRA. We really love those. This is the place to put those down and be able to max out and save those precious tax dollars and grow your money faster. Okay, next is our awesome, super fun backdoor Roth that I'm sure everybody in this room is doing, but anyone who hasn't ventured out into those, what you're doing is you're basically funding an IRA, and you are just not taking a tax deduction on it at tax time, which then makes it called a non-deductible IRA. You could presumably just keep it in a non-deductible IRA. I wouldn't do that, because then when it grows over time, you eventually have to pay income taxes on the gains. You'd be better off in a brokerage account where you put after-tax money in, and then you just pay capital gains taxes at the end. So we don't recommend opening up an IRA, funding it, and then doing nothing with it. Instead, what you can do is you can immediately, or a couple days later, convert that money into a Roth. The Congress still has not shut down the opportunity for you to convert IRAs to a Roth IRA. It is, of course, a non-tax transition because you did not pay taxes in the first place to put the money into the IRA. Okay, next, we highly recommend not being scared of a taxable brokerage account. Taxable brokerage accounts are just fine, and they can be pretty darn tax efficient as well. If you think about it, if you put your money in a pretty simple portfolio and you grow it over time, and there's money in there that you don't spend, it gets to get a step up in basis. You get to, when you pass away, that money, actually, the basis of what it's saying you pay is where the funds that make up that account, it's where they are trading at that point in time. It's called a step up in basis. So we love taxable brokerage accounts and highly recommend taking advantage of those. And that's going to be a big topic of discussion as you go. So we also love investing in alternatives, and they have a place in the tax-efficient waterfall. So there are folks who are really into real estate. There is a place for that. It's non-diversified. It can be risky, but there are folks who are figuring out how to do this in a less and less risky way. Some of you might have non-qualified deferred comp plans, and depending on where you work and the fiscal health of it, you might want to take advantage of those. They're just not nearly as glamorous or as fun, dance on the table worthy as your retirement plan or your HSA. And finally, there is no problem paying off your house. That is okay too. And for folks who are worried or folks who want to be financially independent at a pretty early age, there is nothing wrong with having your house paid off by the time you're 55 and being able to put extra payments towards that. Okay. Student loans. See some twitching happening in the crowd. So here's the thing. We know we have to pay our student loans. Okay? So the best thing we can do is to face them. The worst thing we can do is bury our heads in the sand. I have never seen anyone accidentally do well with their student loans. It takes work, folks. There's two different things that we tend to see. There's lots of different ways to repay your loans, but I can just shrink them down because 90% of people are going to do one of two things with their student loans. First of all, they're going to get into the public student loan forgiveness program. I'm not going to go into the details of these because you will be nerding out on student loans later, but most of you probably know what it is anyway. And where the public student loan forgiveness payments go in, and into the tax efficient waterfall, is they win. Okay? Because think about it. If you are going to have $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 forgiven tax-free of your student loans, that's probably better than anything you can get on that tax efficient waterfall. So at all costs, you make whatever the payment is, you make that payment first. Now, the refinancing is super cool. So when you do this financial plan together and you basically say, here's what I can pay myself first with, and here are the primary buckets I know have to go in for retirement. I know I need to get some tax relief. Every pre-tax option available, and then we'll go ahead and throw in that backdoor Roth because that's pretty cool too. I know the dollar amount I have available to pay on my student loans. And why is that important? Why is that important? Because you now get to go to the refi guys and you know exactly how much you can afford to repay. And so whereas before you might have said, hey, let's go get a 10-year student loan repayment because I'm not really sure. I just want to have it be a flexible tool. And you can reduce your interest rate from 6.8 to 5.2%. What if that number on the form says you can afford to pay these off in 3 or 4 years, and then you get the benefit of a much lower interest rate because you have done a financial plan and you know exactly how much you can afford to pay on your student loans. Okay, so I wanted to point out a few other things. And this is really because I want to drive home the fact that these different types of accounts are not usually brought up in a traditional financial planning relationship because these are accounts that are not obvious but could be really good deals for you. But if you do them, they will not make money they will not make money for a traditional financial advisor who sells things or charges a percentage of assets because these are assets you can't charge on. But they're worth you knowing so that you can take advantage of them in case they're available to you. So one of them that I think is really cool, and it's getting cooler than ever, is Mega Backdoor Roth. Right? Okay, yeah, okay, I saw a few thumbs up. Okay, wow, tough crowd. So I just thought we'd see some people passing out by now. So the Mega Backdoor Roth is super cool. And hospitals are starting to realize that physicians think they're cool. Again, a direct impact from White Coat Network, from people reading about them. So I just found a hospital in North Carolina through a client who allows you to max out your retirement plan, the pre-tax options, and then anything beyond that and the hospital match up to the federal maximum is allowed in after-tax contributions. And then through Fidelity, they allow you to, within the retirement plan, quarterly roll out that after-tax money, remember, just like that non-deductible IRA, into an actual IRA, convert it to a Roth, still managed with Fidelity, and invest it right there. How easy is that? How cool is that? You get more tax diversification here. So money, pay taxes on the front end, and then you get to grow it over time, never pay taxes again. It's just a brilliant option for folks. So when you're asking about that true up on the match, make sure to ask if you are allowed to do after-tax contributions. And this is not to be confused with the Roth option. This is after I've maxed out my $19,500 into a pre-tax account, can I make additional contributions after tax? And then that's what you could then use to potentially do backdoor Roths with. So some of you will have, as I said before, non-qualified deferred comp plans, and no plan is the same. You need to realize that those can sometimes be considered the assets of where you work. So you want to make sure that where you work, that you've seen the financials probably. You do that, but can be a great source of tax deferral. It's not as great as your retirement plan because when you terminate from service, they could dump all that money on you. And it is taxed at your marginal income tax rate on top of the income that you're getting taxed on doing your job. So that could be hugely problematic. What you want to look for with non-qualified deferred comp plans is to make sure that you can stretch out those payments over as long a period as time, or some that allow you to take those payments at certain points, not right after you're separated from service. You can start them at age 60. You can start them at age 65. You can take them over 10 years. So you want to ask these questions to make sure that you don't end up in a worse tax situation than when you started. And then there's a lot of other ones that we've been seeing that are clearly coming through here. A lot of physicians are married to people in corporate America who have these restricted stock options, who have employee stock option plans. And so you've got to also be able to evaluate those pretty well to see if that makes more sense than just going directly to brokerage accounts. Okay, so really quickly, I just want to sum up investing. You're going to nerd out on investing here in just a second. And let me just check the time because I do want to make sure that we are staying on course. I had to move this. Okay. So we believe that everyone needs to invest in an age-appropriate, risk-neutral, diversified portfolio that is basically your age to retirement and capture the broad market returns and minimizing fees and taxes as much as possible. And so our investment strategy recommendation after you've figured out all your buckets is, first of all, dollar cost average. First of all, you want to make sure that you have the maximum amount of cash available as early as possible to put into the market. And so what a financial plan does, I just cannot emphasize this more, is you figure out what that number is that you can afford so that you can be putting the money in. The most common thing we see, and this is particularly with female physicians, is we see piling of cash. Piling of cash. So I had this one that I was talking to weeks ago who had who had gathered up cash all along the way, all through 2019. Was that a good plan or a bad plan? Yeah, not a great plan, right? Because we had a really nice 2019. And 2 weeks ago, she said, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to put my money in the market. And I said to her, the market is going to crash. The moment you put that money in, the stock market is going to crash more than 20%. And she called me and she said, oh my God, do you have ESP? Are you a prognosticator? And I said, no, I tell that to every single client before they put in a load of cash. Your money is going to drop right after you put this cash in 20%. But I nailed it on this one, folks. Okay. After that, once you figure out how to efficiently get your money into the market, so you capture up markets, you capture down markets, you capture the whole thing, then you invest simply and affordably in index funds, which you're going to talk about here in the next session, and don't discount target date funds. They are a little bit more expensive, but they are very efficient. They are very good at taking you and your cohort people, and they make a little veggie soup out of stocks and bonds that are appropriate for your time to retirement and everybody within 5 years of your age who plans to retire at 65 Or you can choose a different year if you plan on retiring early. They are great tools. Don't discount them. They are not a lazy option. Okay, so how do you mix them all together in what we call asset allocation? So I don't understand why anyone would pick their own asset allocation, would actually think through it and do homework on it and then decide for themselves their asset allocation. I don't know why. Because some of the smartest people, Ivy League trained, the smartest people in the universe are actually showing us their homework. And they are telling us what they think after doing all their day job work to figure out asset allocation. They are actually telling you what you should be. And there are 50 major ones out there. And they are target date retirement funds that you can find all of them. And Morningstar compiles them up so we can see what average asset allocations should be. And we take guidance from those. We think you can too. Okay. So a lot has happened since Monday. I thought this was going to be the shocking chart to put in, but I had to turn in my slides a little too early. So how do you deal with volatility? Okay. So first of all, you have to buckle your seatbelt. Because if anybody says to me, 0809 was terrible, they did nothing. What did they do in 0809? They sold. Anybody else who made it through, employed, and contributing in the market came out way ahead. Here's what happens in our brains. First of all, our brains dislike money going down more than it likes money going up. And that is a terrible, terrible piece of our brain. And we have to constantly chatter back to it. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. We expect our money to go up more than it goes down, right? Otherwise, we would not invest. Second of all, you are getting paid for what the stock market is doing today. Did you know that? You get paid to take on risk. That is what investing fundamentally is. If you didn't have to go through what's going on today, then you would not get to grow your money so fast. And if you didn't grow your money so fast, you would have to have something more, like instead of a 20% savings rate, more like a 40% savings rate, okay? We get paid to live through, as hard as it is, what is happening today. And finally, the other thing we say to ourselves is this time is different. All those other market crashes didn't have coronavirus. And every single time we have gone through one of these downturns, there's been something different that says this time the market is going to go down and it's never going to come back up. But let me tell you, if you sell because of that, then you need to go buy guns and buy gold and get a cabin in the woods because things are going to be a lot worse than the stock market. And you need to always understand that we have a self-healing economy. That's why we don't buy individual stocks. Individual companies can go away, but then they get replaced by another one. You just need to realize that our economy is built to recover, and we have to trust in that, and we have to trust fundamentally in the future of our economy. Are we done? Okay, are we tired? Okay, thank you. Okay, so really quickly, this is the rest of the plan. You start savings accounts, which prevent you from having to go into your brokerage account, from taking loans from your retirement plan, and help you have a little fun in your life, like traveling. Here are some of the common savings accounts that our physicians will start, and they fund them automatically. They don't make decisions on it. They just say, hey, bank, can you please transfer $150 a month into my car reserve or $1,100 a month into my travel reserve? And then you go take the trip, put it on a credit card, and pay it back with the savings account, okay? That's the best way for you to control and manage your money. From there, automate your bills. You should not be making a decision on whether you're going to pay your mortgage this month. Is that a decision? No. So don't make it a decision. Have it paid automatically. And then you can review all of your bills on a quarterly or semi-annual basis with the constant goal of eliminating or reducing bills, because it has been studied and proven that bills, no matter what they're paying for, do not bring incremental happiness over time, no matter what the commercials try to tell us. Then you get to spend the rest safely. So whatever is left in the account, you spend it. If you use a credit card, just make sure you don't carry a balance month to month. That means that you are not going over on your budget. So you've paid yourself first, you're protecting against that pair, you're paying all your bills on time, automated, and then you're safely spending the rest. Okay, finally, Dr. Dolly referred to this, and I cannot agree with it more. But you can be here alone, and you can have the perfect financial plan. But if you come back home and you try to give that plan to a spouse, it can go very, very wrong, because a second person has to have a place in your retirement plan. So the places where we see conflict are where you choose a savings rate. You have one person in the couple wants to live for today. The other person in the couple is really worried about Armageddon in the future. How do you bring them together? They have to come up with a mutual savings rate. Sometimes you need that brokered by a professional. And by the way, you'll see in these slides, we have blogs that accompany a lot of these slides. I highly recommend you seeing us delve further in these issues. With investing, you're a physician and your spouse is like, why am I trusting you to invest our money? So a lot of females, especially, we are risk averse when it comes to investing. It's been studied. We have a harder time with it. And so this is where you need a lot of care, a lot of preparation, a lot of research to make sure both people are on board and that one person doesn't pull it too risky and one person in the couple doesn't try to keep everything in cash out of fear. But where we see emotional difficulty and where we know that finances can be a very large source of conflict and lead to divorce is on the spending side. And so we believe a good cash flow management plan, just like the one we laid out here today, that takes into account spenders and savers. And most of the time, that's what attracts folks. Bringing together spenders and savers so that you don't have a spender in charge and the saver is accommodating but feeling bitter about it, and you don't have the saver in charge and being able to tell the spender, no, you're not going to go spend that. You're not going to go spend that. I would not take kindly to that. So we believe that you really need to have, even if you're the one excited to nerd out in this financial plan, you have to bring in your spouse on the plan.